The story-defining climax of Arcane Season 2 Act 1 begins around the 19-minute mark of Episode 3. After weeks of operations in the Undercity, Caitlyn's special strike team has managed to achieve most of its objectives. Thanks to their effective teamwork, new hextech weaponry, and, most importantly, their strategic, morally dubious use of the Grey, they have not only destroyed Zaun's Shimmer production and defeated the remaining Camberan clans led by Margot and Cross, but also terrorized and poisoned hundreds of innocent civilians by flooding their streets with toxic gas. You wouldn't expect a team so haphazardly tossed together to accomplish a whole lot down here, especially with the inclusion of fan-favorite Maddie and Nameless Fish Dude, who we've really only seen behave like inexperienced rookie enforcers that would never even be considered for a mission of this caliber. But hey, I guess Caitlyn didn't think to recruit anyone more qualified. No veteran enforcers, no commanding officers, no chief deputies. No. She specifically picked the 3 characters who happened to interact with Vi earlier that same day. Sure, that makes sense. Why maximize the success of your critical undercover operation by choosing the most competent people at your disposal, when you can pick 3 random characters with no apparent or implied special qualifications? The audience was introduced to them earlier, so obviously they need to be part of this mission. Them, Caitlyn, Vi, and no one else. Great. Also, I guess no one besides Caitlyn had any say in the formation of this team, despite the utmost importance of the mission's success. No higher-ups in the Enforcer hierarchy, no second-in-command after the sheriff's death. This very young, relatively inexperienced officer just inherited all her mother's authority, became a decorated officer, and overrode Piltover's entire chain of command off-screen, only to burst into a closed council meeting with her newly assembled pseudo-Avenger squad and declare the measures Piltover will take against Zaun.
I am a decorated officer, leader of House Kiraman. Address me with respect, or keep your mouth shut.
Would have been nice to see any of this actually play out, given the importance it carries for Caitlyn's character. Perhaps even explore Piltover's internal politics, its population's views on the Kiraman's successor's rise to power, or the ethical implications of her proposed methods, but we don't have time for any of that. Instead, these story and world-building elements were either skipped entirely or relegated to the closing minute of Episode 1, offering nothing but the bare minimum without taking the slightest advantage of their narrative potential. A far greater missed opportunity, however, lies in this entire operation being summed up with a single musical montage at the beginning of Episode 3. All we get to see in this glorified, upbeat 50-second music video is the team venturing through Zaun's expansive ventilation system, gassing the Zaunites, dismantling Shimmer, and defeating the rest of Silco's followers, all while looking for Jinx and running into her many traps. No further exploration of Margot and Cross, their rivalry, their influence throughout the lanes, their history, or their motivations. No additional world-building insights into the state of a leaderless Zaun. Little to no information on the nature and extent to which the citizens are affected by the Grey. No moral quandary about the strike team using this poisonous and basically indiscriminate gas on the Zaunites. Nothing. It's a jarringly lackluster summary of what could have been a compelling subplot told across an entire act, if not an entire season. We could have spent time fleshing out our 3 random sidekicks and their dynamic with Vi and Caitlyn, exploring everyone's unique perspective on the larger conflict between Zaun and Piltover and the righteousness of their actions, creating interesting moments of tension along the way. Instead, nearly all of it is glossed over, leaving us knowing no more about these characters at the end of Act 1 than we did at the end of Episode 1, and with little to no meaningful understanding of what these few weeks of operations even entailed. All to now treat us to the climactic culmination of every major writing misstep of this season's first act. A fight scene riddled with sloppy choreography, poorly written dialogue, astronomical levels of plot armor, and a staggering lack of character consistency. So, after encountering several of Jinx's traps scattered all over the lanes, the strike team comes across Meech's former numbers man, who tells them that Jinx has been rerouting the vents deep within the tunnels to aid in some unknown plan of hers.
This is it then. Cuff him.
Hi! I told you everything I know!
You're a confessed criminal. You'll spend your retirement in a cell.
Vi then takes Caitlyn aside and asks her to cut the others loose, as she fears for their safety and worries that Jinx might anticipate their presence and figure out a way to use them against them.
She'll smell their nerves a mile away and find a way to use them against us. Tell me I'm wrong.
Which is funny considering we barely even know who these characters are, let alone what they mean to Vi or Kate at this point. But beyond that, why would such a vague concern ever be considered a good reason to have more than half of your fighting force not partake in the final and seemingly most challenging objective of your mission?
Jinx is gonna have surprises in store for us.
All the more reason to bring backup.
Yeah, exactly, Vi. Why would you assume that bringing your other teammates will pose more of a liability than a significant improvement to the success of the mission? So far, they've all proven very capable in dealing with Jinx's traps, and from all we can tell, have been instrumental in facilitating the operation's progress. So what specifically makes them such easy targets for Jinx in a hypothetical confrontation?
She'll smell their nerves a mile away and find a way to use them against us.
How? In what way? By that logic, shouldn't Vi suggest Caitlyn go back? Wouldn't Jinx have even more success using the person she loves against her? So why is she suggesting this? Well, the answer is simple. You see, the writers of Season 2, they don't want these pesky side characters no one cares about to be part of the epic confrontation between our main characters. They want a justification to get them out of the picture so they can have an easier time writing and constructing the final battle. How do we do this? Well, one solution would be to have Loris get so severely injured that he needs to be carried back to Piltover to receive proper medical treatment. Since he's easily the heaviest of the group, it would require 2 people to accompany him, leaving Kate and Vi to confront Jinx on their own. The solution we get instead is Vi voicing a very confusing and weak justification for why the other teammates shouldn't help them in their fight with Jinx, despite the obvious advantage they would provide. Who cares if her reasoning doesn't make sense? As long as we have an excuse to remove variables that would otherwise make the ensuing fight scene more complex and difficult to write and choreograph, it's all good. Fantastic job, guys. This is exactly the kind of writing I expect from Arcane. Let's move on. So Kate, against all rhyme or reason, agrees to Vi's flimsy suggestion, and they both head further down into the tunnels, now armed with a more precise idea of Jinx's whereabouts. As they descend deeper and deeper, uncovering more and more clues of Jinx's presence, they find themselves in what seems to be an old temple, complete with intricately embellished walls and massive stone pillars. Yup. This random, gigantic, century-old temple is just hanging out here somewhere deep within Zaun's pipeline network. Let's put a pin in that for now. The scene opens with them arriving in the temple's center, where Vi in particular notices several of Jinx's crayon sketches drawn on the stone pillars depicting moments from their childhood. Among these drawings is Vanda, carrying the orphaned sisters off the bridge after the tragic battle, Powder kneeling and sobbing in front of Vanda's lifeless, shimmer-ridden body, crying out for Vi in the aftermath of the explosion. A crying monkey hextech bomb, the one she built that night in an attempt to save her family, and a monstrous depiction of teenage Vi, an image that has been haunting Jinx ever since. There's a sketch of Milo and Clagger with their eyes crossed out, a happy one of Powder and Vi, a sketch of the monsters that have plagued her mind ever since that fateful day, strongly resembling those shown in the climax of Season 1, and finally, a blue, evil-looking, dragon-esque creature, likely Jinx's distorted mental image of Caitlyn.
Shut up. It's just a goodbye hug. She wouldn't do that. Not again.
Certainly a nice touch on the part of the environment artists. Not only is this something the audience expects Jinx to do in anticipation of Vi's arrival, especially after the climax of Season 1, but it also symbolically encapsulates every major piece of trauma that has fueled her twisted transformation into the person she is today. I would be more enthusiastic about these sketches if they weren't one of the only few noteworthy positives in the entire scene. So make of that what you will.
Kate.
Reminded of everything that happened between them since their childhood, Vi then turns to Caitlyn and tells her that she should not hesitate to shoot Jinx if the chance presents itself.
If you see an opening, take the shot.
Ignoring the overly dramatic delivery of that line, it would seem from this statement that during their week-long manhunt for Jinx, they've apparently never even talked about whether and how they specifically plan on taking her out, or what their exact approach in dealing with her would look like. That's a little odd. Some might call it incredibly fucking stupid, but whatever. They probably talked about it off-screen, and Vi just wanted to be extra dramatic in that moment. I mean, they are both fully aware of what Jinx is capable of, so surely they've come up with a better plan than, I go and fight her, you stay back and shoot her if you can. Surely they wouldn't be so brash as to just walk into this unfamiliar temple without a solid plan of attack, so it's all good. The important part is that at this point in time, Vi is not only fully convinced that the sister she once loved is gone, she also seems hell-bent on taking her life. To rid the world of the most dangerous individual in Zorn and Piltover combined, the one that has caused both cities so much trouble so that the first steps toward peace can be made, a sentiment echoed in the very first lines spoken by her this season.
You were right, Kate. Powder's gone.
Unfortunately, we are barely given anything to justify such a drastic change in Vi's perspective. In fact, practically every decision she made in Season 1 outright contradicts the off-screen development she supposedly underwent when we see her again in Episode 1.
What I can say is, she still needs you. They all do. So what do you say?
Over the course of Season 1, Acts 2 and 3, Vi saw her sister gleefully hurt her enemies, discovered that she had killed at least a handful of Echo's friends during her 7 years of working for Silco, witnessed her blowing up a dozen enforcers on the bridge and unloading her minigun at her and Caitlyn, before ending the fight with Echo by blowing both of them up, giving Vi every reason to assume that Jinx had just killed the only other member of her family she had left. Jinx then kidnapped Caitlyn, demanded that Vi kill her, and viciously knocked her out with a minigun slam to the skull, leaving her bloodied and incapacitated before coming dangerously close to executing her. Despite all these heinous acts, Vi was unwilling to give up on her sister. Not at any moment during these events, nor at the very end of Episode 9. She was willing to leave Caitlyn, the Undercity, and everything that remained of her old life behind just to make amends with Powder.
Powder, listen. We can just go. We'll leave and never come back. It's true. We'll put this behind us. You'll never have to see him again, Powder.
Throughout Season 1, Vi's actions consistently demonstrated that her love and hope for her sister were as unshakable as they reasonably could have been, no matter how far Jinx had fallen. And now I'm supposed to believe that Jinx's attack on Piltover's council, the same government responsible for the systemic oppression of their people, the same council indirectly responsible for their parents' death, the authorities of the very institution Vi has despised her entire life, is what finally tipped the scale? Why? How? Just because one of the casualties happened to be Caitlyn's mother? That's the one thing Vi couldn't reconcile with her undying love for her sister? The one thing that fully convinced her that all the hope she held out in the face of atrocities worse than the council attack was suddenly gone? I'm sorry, but this is not Vi. Not the Vi we left at the end of episode 9. Not with the story we've been told or the events we've seen take place in season 1. Now, in fairness, it's not entirely impossible or implausible for Vi to develop these feelings toward her sister, to adopt this new perspective. But that's the point. Develop. Proper development requires time, interaction, and a clear progression of events that allow us to understand and empathize with how she got here. That didn't happen. Not even one bit. Ending season 1 with Vi holding on to her unwavering love for her sister, only to skip forward a few months in the timeline with no interactions, no further confrontations, no time for her to reflect or wrestle with her feelings, and then show us this Vi, who has not only given up on Powder, but is now seemingly content with the idea of killing her, feels nothing short of insulting. This isn't just a missed opportunity. It's a betrayal of her character. The show even goes out of its way to repeat this sentiment earlier in this very episode.
Are you sure you're right? My sister is gone. There's only Jinx now.
Just so we are absolutely convinced that this really is what Vi has come to believe about her sister since the attack on the council. That's her character now. She's done a full 180. Thank you, writers. As someone who passionately enjoyed Arcane's first season to the point of having watched it 9 times by the time of making this video, someone who was deeply emotionally invested in Vi and Jinx's relationship, I definitely feel very respected in my appreciation for your show. Now the Vi we get to see is ready to kill not just the only remaining member of her family, but arguably the central element of her character. Of course there's also Echo, but don't even get me started on how Vi didn't seem to care about him after they parted ways on the bridge. She didn't bother to visit or contact the Firelights after the council attack, nor did she check to see if Jinx had actually killed Echo on the bridge. Jesus, Vi, what have you become? Besides, since when did Vi and Caitlyn decide they wanted to kill Jinx? Especially down here deep within the lanes. Wasn't the whole idea that the city needed a culprit, a scapegoat for all the death and destruction that has been caused? Didn't they specifically place the hit on Jinx to bring her in alive?
There's always a deal to be struck. We give them Jinx. That's all they really want. They want you alive.
I guess they changed their minds between episode 2 and episode 3, for reasons that are never even addressed, let alone explained. Is it perhaps because over these weeks of the Strike Force purging the Undercity, Jinx and her traps proved too dangerous not to confront with lethal force? She didn't even manage to kill or incapacitate one of them, so surely that wouldn't be the reason. What is the reason? Why not just incapacitate Jinx, slap some handcuffs on her, and prosecute her for her crimes in front of the whole city? Why not make an example out of her? Anyway.
Jinx!
Finally got the name right.
Vi, now fully determined to face the monster her sister has become, steps into the temple center and calls out for her, promptly answered by Jinx's amorphous voice resounding through the temple.
Guess there really isn't a crack in the earth where you won't find me.
While the sisters... ex-sisters. Right. While the ex-sisters are talking for the first time in months, Caitlin takes her sniping position with Jace's new Hextech-enhanced rifle. The rifle he specifically crafted for her, on top of making a special retractable shield for Loris and fixing the Atlas gauntlets for Vi. All within a couple of hours, despite having sustained quite the serious back injury during Rennie's attack on Piltover's memorial earlier that day, as well as the fact that he almost certainly didn't have any of these weapons conceptualized, let alone prepared to be forged this quickly. Meaning he would have had to make them from scratch, just so Caitlin and her squad could make this dramatic entrance during the private council meeting.
I am a decorated officer, leader of House Kieran.
Episode 1 was a rough start to all of this. Anyway, let's get back on track.
What is this place?
Yeah, very good question, Vi. Why is this ancient temple with sculpted pillars and a delicately intricate, colored relief sculpture sitting deep down in the Undercity? Who built this? When did they build it? Why did they build it?
Don't you remember the old Jana bedtime stories Vander used to tell us?
Jinx answers by reminding Vi of the bedtime stories Vander used to tell them when they were children. Tales about a wispy wind woman named Jana, who rescued dozens of miners trapped deep below the surface and in desperate need for air. Aha, so that's the meaningful context behind this place. It's a League of Legends reference, a nod to a character never mentioned in the show, from a game I don't play and couldn't give less of a shit about. Remember how the final showdown of Season 1 took place in the ruins of Silco's old Shimmer factory? A location brimming with narrative significance and sentimental history for 3 of the 4 characters involved?
Really thought I buried this place. But I should have known better. He took everything from us. Right here, he stabbed Vander in the back. Just like he planned to with me. All the time saying you abandoned me when he knew the truth. Liar.
Now we have this random, never-seen-before temple as the backdrop for the climactic fight between 4 of our most important characters. A cool battle arena, devoid of meaning or connection to the story being told. Excellent. But setting that waste of storytelling potential aside, how does this temple even exist down here? I can't imagine a place like this, with its massive stone pillars, hyper-detailed relief sculptures carved into gigantic stone doors, being erected by the kind of people living in Zorn, a hyper-industrial, steampunk-esque city fueled by crime, corruption, chaos, and survival of the fittest. Why would anyone in the Undercity allocate the time, resources, or organization to construct something like this? And if they did, what did the Undercity even look like back then? Was the city at some point home to an ancient, religiously devout civilization? If so, Arcane offers absolutely no hints of this through its world building. In fact, this temple, this whole area, and by extension all the questions it raises about the past of Zorn and Piltover are never even mentioned again after the ensuing battle concludes. Just to be crystal clear, this is the climax of Season 2's first act. This is the first time Vi and Jinx have met since the end of Episode 9, and you chose to set it in a location specifically created for this one scene and disregarded immediately afterward, carrying no narrative or symbolic significance for Arcane's world. Sure, it's a neat little reference for League fans to clap at, but for the rest of us, it's meaningless. I don't know who this Jana character is, and I don't care to find out unless it's going to mean something to the story I'm watching. It doesn't.
Never thought my sister would turn bluebelly.
Never thought mine would orphan kids.
Well, one of those statements is certainly much more valid than the other. Sorry, Vi, but you already knew very well that Jinx killed people while working for Silco. This isn't news to you. She took out plenty of Silco's enemies over the years, many of whom would have had children, and that didn't stop you from doing everything you could to get her back. If orphans really were your breaking point, you'd have given up on her far earlier. And you, of all people, know what life is like for an orphan in the Undercity. Their lives are far worse than those of Piltover's children, who at least will have a support system to fall back on should they lose their parents. Down here, without an adult to look out for them, they are doomed to a life of suffering. Even putting all that aside, need I remind you that Jinx blew up a dozen enforcers on the bridge. Many of them almost certainly had children of their own. You witnessed this massacre firsthand, far more intensely than anything during the council attack. And yet you still didn't give up on her.
I spent so many nights in that shitty prison on that freezing floor, hungry, bloody, counting the hours. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of getting back to you.
Whatever point you are trying to make here crumbles under the weight of your own actions in Season 1. Sure, it's good that you call out Jinx for her morally reprehensible actions, things you never believed your sister would be capable of. But with everything that happened between the two of you after your reunion back in episode 6, this remark comes a little late, don't you think? On the other hand, Jinx is making a very good point, an even better one than she might realize.
Poisoning our air. You've turned a leaf, sister.
The idea that you would so quickly join the institution you have despised your entire life, the one that symbolized nothing but terror, oppression, and loss, without any hint of meaningful on-screen character development, is entirely absurd. These are the same people who killed your parents, terrorized Zaun, and made the majority of your existence a living hell. The same people who saw your kind not as a community worth protecting, but as a blight to control. And yet, here you are, wearing their uniform, gassing the streets of your own home as if none of that ever mattered, justifying it in front of the one person who should still mean the most to you.
We used the Grey to clear the streets, to keep people safe.
Sure you did, Vi. I'm sure the Zaunites feel very safe being forced to leave their homes, gasping for air, and being poisoned by a toxic gas that your unhinged, tyrannical girlfriend chose to release on them. How did this happen? How do you go from rejecting Caitlyn's offer in one moment to suddenly deciding to put on the badge and work with Piltover's enforcers just a couple of hours later? Was it guilt over what happened at the memorial? Was it your deep love for Caitlyn? Because to me, it just looks like you've lost all the agency and conviction you held in Season 1. How powerful would it have been to actually see Vi wrestle with the idea of working alongside the very people she spent her life fighting against? To see her questioning the values she developed in her most formative years? To watch her reluctantly come to understand that fighting for Zaun's future might require doing something morally repugnant? Something her younger self would never forgive.
What I don't understand is how you can work with them. We were here, we saw what they did.
Instead, the writer skipped over all that nuance, robbing us of what could have been one of Arcane's most compelling arcs.
I grew up knowing I'm less than them. That my place is down there.
This only works if we can trust each other.
It doesn't work. It never has. You topsiders always find a way to screw us.
I watched them kill my parents. Do you have any idea how that feels?
I thought you were on our side.
You didn't think at all. Me. Joined the Peanut Patrol.
And I thought she had no sense of humor.
To have her toss that aside without so much as a meaningful conversation or internal struggle severely undermines what used to be one of her most defining traits. Sure, there's a subtle, unsure look on her face after putting on the badge, but that's not enough. A fleeting moment of doubt cannot replace what should have been a deeply emotional and difficult journey for Vi. one that unfolds over the course of an entire season, not one episode. We could have seen her grapple with the hypocrisy of joining the Enforcers, weighing her desire to help Caitlyn and the citizens of Zaun against the trauma of betraying the principles that carried her through her whole life, and the pain of becoming the very thing responsible for so much of her suffering. This season's arc should have been about Vi coming to terms with the reality that Piltover isn't a monolithic enemy, but a deeply flawed society where good people like Caitlyn coexist with systemic oppression, ultimately informing her choice to reconcile her past and fight for a brighter future for both cities. A gradual realization, the foundations for which were already carefully established by Season 1.
In what mad world would I trust someone like you?
Someone like me? You Enforcers are all the same. What is this place? It's where the kind of people you topsiders don't want to think about wind up.
We aren't monsters, you know. We're people, just like you.
You don't know anything about me.
Even though we failed her in countless ways, she risked everything to show me what life is really like down there.
You can't talk to him. He hates you, everything you stand for. He will never back down.
You had it. You had it all right there. The tension, the nuance, the opportunity to give Vi one of the most memorable and complex arcs in the show, and yet none of it was realized.
I watched them kill my parents. Do you have any idea how that feels? We use the Grey to clear the streets, to keep people safe.
Once again, a critical perspective shift for her character happens entirely off-screen. Something that would have taken the real Vi weeks, if not months, of painful self-doubt, self-loathing, and deliberation to come to terms with is completely glossed over. Because we have to cram 80% of Arcane's remaining story into the same number of episodes it took to tell the first 20. By the way, Kate is a terrible person for only letting Vi join her strike team and help out in Zaun on the condition that she officially align herself with Piltover's forces. She knows exactly how Vi feels about Enforcers, and yet there's no apparent or implied reason why Vi couldn't have accompanied Caitlyn without assuming an official role.
I can't wear this.
People are calling for blood. The Council won't stop them. You can show that not all of Zaun supports Jinx.
Nothing stops Caitlyn from simply doing away with the badge and letting Vi tag along, sparing both of them the emotional pain and conflict. The only explanation I can think of is that Caitlyn wanted to ensure that Vi would be on her side and didn't care how it would make her feel, ignoring her lifelong experience of trauma, marginalization, and injustice at the hands of Piltover. She didn't even consider using her position as leader of House Kiraman to circumvent the rules and spare Vi's feelings.
I thought you were on our side.
Well, at least we now know how little Kate actually cares about her.
Let's move on.
You've turned a leaf, sister.
I'm done blaming myself for your mistakes.
Alright, everyone who has seen my previous video already knows how much I despise this line in particular, for reasons that should be more than obvious at this point, but I'll gladly explain it anyway. It is an indisputable fact that throughout Season 1, Vi explicitly and repeatedly acknowledges that much of what Powder became, what Jinx became, is a direct result of her own choices.
Then a real monster showed up. And I just ran away.
She rejected and abandoned Powder after the explosion, allowed her to fall into Silco's grasp, and even admitted to Echo that she believed Jinx was her responsibility.
All that's left is Jinx, and she belongs to
You're
Silco.
wrong. She's still in there. I can reach her. I can't leave her again.
You can't change her.
I have to try.
But whatever happens, it's on you.
This overwhelming sense of guilt and accountability drove nearly all her actions in Season 1.
Does this mean anything to you?
Where did you get this? Have you heard anything about Powder? I think Silco has her. I have to find her. Powder! I'm here for you. Only you. You can fire that thing if you want, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to abandon you again. I spent so many nights in that shitty prison on that freezing floor, hungry, bloody, counting the hours. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of getting back to you.
How, then, are we to believe that Vi could say these words with such strong conviction? Why should we believe this reflects how she truly feels in this moment? Just a quick reminder, this is Vi in Season 1, Episode 8.
And I just ran away. I left her.
This is Vi in Season 1, Episode 9.
I'm sorry, Powder. I never meant to leave you.
And this is Vi in Season 2, Episode 3. After not having interacted with Jinx even once since their confrontation in Episode 9.
I'm done blaming myself for your mistakes. Done pretending you're my sister. You're not.
This is the most egregious statement she's ever made, and it's entirely unearned. It would have been fine, great even, if she said this during a different version of Act 3, after proper development would lead her to this point. Not now, not the very first time they see each other again.
You killed her. I'm not gonna let you stain her memory anymore.
Again, this isn't Vi. It's a bastardized fanfic version of the character she used to be. On a more unrelated note, can we just take a moment to appreciate the sheer stupidity of Vi walking right into the temple's center without any appropriate protection? She's not expecting an ambush, not concerned about any traps, and not worried that Jinx might already have a bullseye on her and kill her instantly. Nope. She just waltzes in, completely exposed from all angles, while listening and talking to Jinx's voice echo ominously from every direction. Does this seem like something Season 1 Vi would do? Does this look like the highly experienced street-smart fighter she is supposed to be?
Yeah. No.
The funniest part about this is that Vi literally told Caitlyn earlier in this episode that Jinx would have surprises in store for them. So I guess she just forgot? Okay, that's cool. Seriously, what if one of them happened to step into a trap that instantly blew them up or caused the whole temple to collapse on their heads? They are dealing with Jinx, someone they know to be unpredictable and incredibly dangerous, and yet they walk into this completely foreign area with only a faint semblance of caution. No reckon, no planning, nothing besides a surface-level awareness of potential danger. Well, I mean, Vi did tell Caitlyn to shoot at Jinx when she gets the chance, so that's kind of a plan, right?
So, just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
Do you have an actual plan at this point?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Jinx then finally steps out of the fog and delivers one of the most cringe-inducing lines to ever come out of Arcane.
Then stop me. 'Cause no matter what I do, I just can't seem to die.
Ugh, why would you do this? God, it's so painfully on the nose. This is the kind of shit a pretentious teenager would post on Tumblr during their suicidal thoughts are my aesthetic phase, only for it to end up on r/I'm 14 and this is deep a few months later. It has the same exact energy as Jinx's earlier retort to Vi.
Never thought mine would orphan kids.
Ha! Why not? Done it to myself enough.
Writers, why would you ever make Jinx say this? This is not something she should be saying with so much quirk and attitude. It's not a subject to be treated lightly. It's the defining cause for her suffering, the foundation of Powder's transformation into Jinx and what will go on to become her reason to end it all. Stuff like this only makes me think that you are no longer interested in fleshing out her internal pain, but would rather move past it for the sake of hitting your predetermined plot beats. Instead of subtlety, instead of show don't tell, you are having her blurt it out in the most performative way possible. There's no depth, no room for interpretation like there was in Season 1 with its tasteful, masterful portrayal of Jinx's fractured psyche. Just a painfully obvious line meant to sound epic and badass while being entirely oblivious to how tryhard it comes across.
Yep, that's me. You ever need to curse a sibling or a family or a society? My card.
Fuck off. This is how I would expect the game version of Jinx to talk about herself. Not the complex, nuanced character we saw in Season 1, who didn't narrate her trauma but lived and suffered through it. That Jinx found an outlet in her new, self-destructive identity, driven by the crushing realization that she could only ever hurt the people close to her.
You want to talk about today?
What's the point? I ruined everything. I always do.
Vi?
Why did you laugh?
Because you're a Jinx!
No, it was a mistake. It was a mistake.
Because you're a Jinx!
What makes you different? Makes you strong.
After continuing to hurt the people she depended on for emotional support, she came to believe there was no good version of herself. No way she could make things better for anyone. And the only resolution she could see was to rid the world of her existence entirely. To treat her deep-seated trauma in this way, to have her speak so blatantly and not to mention sarcastically about it, is not at all how we left her at the end of Season 1. It trivializes her pain, turning what was once the best written character in the entire show into something almost shallow.
I just can't seem to die.
I'm sorry.
Ugh, what the hell is that response from Vi? Why would she say that after hearing her sister essentially voice her severe suicidal tendencies? And why would she say it like that?
I'm sorry.
The breathy, intense line delivery, closing her eyes, lowering her head, and looking away. It feels so performative and melodramatic, with little to none of the genuine, raw emotion we saw from Vi in Season 1. Oh, right, Season 2 Vi is a completely different character. Sorry, I got that confused. In all seriousness, I'd be very curious if anyone can find me a single line spoken by Vi throughout Arcane Season 1 that sounds as melodramatic as these two.
If you see an opening, take the shot.
I'm sorry.
So Caitlyn, seeing her opening, takes a shot aimed right at Jinx's head. Only it's revealed to actually be a large metal disc that was merely mirroring her reflection, which she must have propped up in advance to trick them. Unfortunately, whoever wrote this scene doesn't seem to understand how reflections work. Tell me, where could Jinx have been standing to project this life-sized image of herself to both Caitlyn and Vi at the same time? The only way to make this work is if she were standing directly in front of the metal plate, which she obviously isn't. Well, where is she then? I don't see her in any of these shots, not in the front, nor in the back, nor on the sides. What are we doing, guys? Besides, how would this ever be a convincing optical illusion? How could Vi and Kate clearly see Jinx's reflection through the fog, but not notice the metal plate itself? What, is this another one of her shimmer-enhanced abilities? Can she project her reflection onto surfaces without actually being there? Is the air in this place laced with hallucinogens? Is this some type of genjutsu targeted at Kate and Vi? And what exactly does Jinx intend to gain from this? Did she just want to pull a quick prank on them before the actual fight begins? This is very silly. Why would you do this? Why would you write it this way?
I'm ready.
Cringy one-liner, check. Man, doesn't this face-off feel so earned? This is truly what this first act has been building towards. Finally, after so much heartbreak, struggle and betrayal, after so much character development these two have gone through since the end of Season 1, they are now confronting each other in a battle of epic proportions.
And it will change.
While Vi and Jinx give each other an epic stare down, Kate goes to take her next shot at Jinx, but is caught off guard by Sevika stepping in front of her and kicking the rifle away. Well done, Sevika. Highly experienced combatant and Silco's former right-hand man. You had the perfect opportunity to knock her out with one punch from your very lethal mechanical arm, immediately removing her from the fight. Instead, you chose to give up the element of surprise, walk right in front of her and attack the rifle first. What if Caitlyn fired her shot in that exact moment? You would be dead. Well, at least you will take care of her quickly now that you have closed the distance. Too bad for Kate, honestly. There's no way she can survive a close quarters fight against Sevika for any longer than 30 seconds. Unless there's some miraculous intervention stopping Sevika from attacking Caitlyn in an even remotely proficient manner, she is done for. Cutting back to our ex-sisters, Jinx jumps down from the pillar she was standing on and unloads a barrage of bullets on Vi, who manages to block all of it with the aforementioned metal plate that conveniently landed right at her feet and is thick enough to be completely bulletproof against Jinx's minigun. Damn. I guess if Jinx hadn't decided to pull this random prank on them, Vi would have just been shredded right here. Well, not necessarily. Maybe her gauntlet's energy shield could have also blocked the bullets. Although I have very good reason to think that she wouldn't have used it here even if she could have. After blocking the barrage for a couple of seconds, Vi throws the thankfully bulletproof plate at Jinx, forcing her to dodge, which creates an opening for Vi to get close and land a massive hit. Jinx blocks it with Pow Pow, which barely manages to tank the gauntlet's powerful punch, only for Vi to grab it and tear it apart, much to Jinx's visible surprise. Yes, I know. This shot looks fantastic. This whole scene is filled with amazing looking shots and breathtaking animation. Let me be clear. There is plenty of tangible quality to be found here, and I will gladly give credit where it's due. Visually, this season knocks it out of the park. It's all so gorgeous to look at. Unfortunately, all of it is in service of a rushed, convoluted story that is stripped bare of the exact qualities that made Season 1 so special for people like myself. Those who primarily consume and cherish these stories for their substance, the plot, the characters, the world building, rather than the mere visual and auditory presentation of those elements. That's not to say there isn't plenty of value to be drawn from the way a piece of storytelling chooses to present itself artistically, especially when talking about a visual splendor like Arcane. It's just to point out the fact that presentation is generally meant to serve, bolster, and elevate the story being told. If the story, the foundation if you will, is fundamentally flawed, there's only so much a talented, hardworking artist can do to remedy those deep-rooted issues. Meanwhile, several hundred feet under the hex gates, Jace, like a complete idiot, decides it would be a good idea to touch the wild arcane ruin. Bro, what are you doing? How are you doing this so casually? Which, of course, causes some kind of ripple in the space-time continuum that makes all Hextech-powered tools, weapons, and machinery spasm out and malfunction, including Caitlyn's rifle and Vi's gauntlets. Great. I'm sure this will come in very handy whenever the writers want to protect certain characters and prevent certain things from happening in the fight. So, yeah, can't wait to see how that plays out. Oh, and Heimerdinger doesn't even care to stop Jace from doing something so obviously dangerous. He just stands there, doing nothing but watching while this massive foreign spawn of the Arcane floats right in front of them. Precisely the kind of thing that he, of all characters, should be the most concerned about. Excellent. I'm guessing his character has been replaced as well? Honestly, this question feels almost pointless after episode 2, where Heimerdinger didn't express even an ounce of resentment or disappointment toward his former pupil, the one whose skill, judgment, and goodwill he trusted enough to grant a seat on the council, only for Jace to orchestrate his expulsion from both the council and the academy.
Jace, this is a violation of the ethos. I will have it destroyed one way or another.
That's your opinion. We'll see if the council agrees. I believe it's time we gave the beloved founder of our city a well-deserved retirement.
Jace, don't do this.
Professor!
Yes, of course! What the devil's gotten into you? I apologize for the intrusion. We were attempting to sneak in. Oh, pish-posh, like you've never done it.
Nor did he express any feelings or communicate any thoughts about the loss of his fellow counselors in Jinx's attack, nor react appropriately in the face of the horrifying reality that Hextech has taken a huge step towards becoming the nation-destroying power he dreads most.
I've seen this power in the wrong hands. It corrupts, consumes. You must destroy it.
That pattern is on my tree because you pissed the Arcane off with all your demands?
That's not what I...
Oh, the lad may be onto something. Every action sparks a reaction. Oh, ball sockets. Please, if ever you've put faith in my guidance, hear me now. I've seen nations destroyed by a single seed, and it looked exactly like this. I've seen miracles spring from the hands of mages many times, but so often they turn to horrors.
Nor did he show any concern or urgency upon discovering that the Hex Core, the device he considered to be the closest thing to the force that has laid waste to entire civilizations, has merged with Victor, who is currently roaming around somewhere in Zorn doing God knows what.
Victor, something's different. You've changed. What did you do?
What do you mean, Professor?
It's that thing. It must be destroyed. Oh no.
Where's Victor?
Every action sparks a reaction. Oh, ball sockets.
Just like Vi and Jinx, Jace and Heimerdinger act nothing like you'd expect them to based on their prior characterization and the last interaction they had with one another in Season 1. God, it's all so wrong. None of it works. Also, thank God Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger just happened to come down here the same day, at the exact same time that this fight is taking place, so that their stupid actions can conveniently disrupt the Hextech weapons and significantly nerf Vi and Kate's combat performance. Thank God these two completely unrelated events just managed to line up perfectly in such a way that will have serious ramifications on the trajectory of Arcane's story. Had they chosen to go down here as little as 5 minutes earlier or later, this fight would have turned out a little differently. Speaking of which, we then cut back to the fight and see that Caitlyn has somehow managed to create enough distance between herself and Savika to deliver a body shot, just as her rifle conveniently glitches out, sparring Savika's life. Savika charges in and chokeslams her against the wall. and then just stands there, doing nothing to knock out or execute her opponent. Because if she did, Caitlyn would be dead, and the writers don't want that to happen. So the only thing these talentless hacks can do is turn Sevika into a demented, sadistic imbecile, incapable of even the most basic combat prowess. Now, in fairness, one possible explanation for this seemingly incompetent behavior of hers could be Sevika's strong hatred for Kate as the leader of Piltover's efforts to snuff out anyone still loyal to Silco's dream of Zaun. Over the past months of the strike team's aggressive activity, she has grown to hate the new leader of House Kiraman so much that, when having her forced against a wall, she is relishing the moment, enjoying the panic and helplessness of the person she currently perceives as her greatest enemy. She wants to see Caitlyn struggle, to suffer, to realize that even with all her resources, dirty tactics, and her fancy hextech gun, she still gets crushed by someone who is simply a stronger, more experienced, and more determined fighter. Sure, that could be a valid reason for her absurdly low combat intelligence in this fight. Unfortunately, this doesn't account for the fact that her way of achieving this affect-driven goal is still incredibly stupid and severely out of character. Even when Sevika is enjoying her dominance over an opponent, she always finishes the job quickly. Her pride and relish in combat rarely, if ever, interfere with her efficiency, and certainly never to such a comical degree. She could bash her head in, choke her, do something similar to what she did to Vi in their first fight. The most well-choreographed fight in the entire series, by the way. And all this is ignoring the fact that she already tried to kill Caitlyn mere seconds earlier, showing that she clearly has no issue disposing of her as quickly as possible. So then, what the fuck is this? Sevika, what are you doing? What do you expect to gain from holding your helpless opponent against the wall by grabbing her jaw like that?
Don't worry, this is just stupid.
Now, the other glaring question to ask is, how does Kate get out of this heavily disadvantaged position? Sevika has an incredibly strong, unyielding grip on her. Even her jaw muscles can't weaken it. She definitely won't be able to pull the same knee-to-crotch move Vi used to free herself. So what could she possibly do? Well, as this is happening, Vi's gauntlets are failing her too, bringing her to her knees and pinning her to the ground. Jinx then takes her sweet time walking up to her, Hextech rocket launcher in hand. She spends a good 5 seconds staring at her immobilized sister before hoisting Fishbone onto her shoulder, aiming directly at Vi and taking another 3 seconds to finally pull the trigger. Conveniently, she manages to waste just enough time for Vi's gauntlets to start working again, allowing her to get up and narrowly dodge the rocket. Interestingly, the first time I watched this fight, I misinterpreted this moment as Vi letting go of her gauntlets to dodge the rocket, which would have been a very clever thing to do given her predicament. It's only upon rewatching the fight scene that I realized, no, she didn't. Instead, she bet her life on the completely absurd off chance that whatever was affecting her gauntlets would just miraculously stop doing that. Exactly when she needed it to. Brilliant. Also, just so we're clear, I'd like everyone, especially every fan of Season 2, to acknowledge the fact that Jinx just shot a rocket at a completely immobilized Vi. A rocket that, had it hit her, which was by far the most likely outcome, would have shredded her to pieces. I don't care how much people want to deny this, claiming that all Jinx truly wants in this moment is for Vi to live a happy life without her. I don't care that her supposed plan was to die at her sister's hands in this random stupid temple to end her suffering and the exclusively negative impact she believes she has on the people around her. Jinx is absolutely trying to kill Vi in this fight. arguably far more so than Vi is trying to kill her. In any case, we were asking how Caitlyn escapes Sevika's iron grip. Well, as a consequence of the exchange we've just discussed, this happens. Yup, you saw that correctly. It just so happens that the rocket Vi dodged hits the wall right next to Sevika and Kate, sending them both flying.
Is convenient?
If Vi's gauntlets didn't pin her to the ground at the exact spot and angle for Jinx's rocket to land where it does, Caitlyn would be dead. Either due to the explosion ripping them both apart, or, far more likely, the rocket landing anywhere else in the temple. I guess both fights just happened to line up perfectly just in time for Kate to be saved. We then get a shot of Vi running somewhere. Where? I have no idea. She's not running to Jinx, she's clearly not running to Kate or Sevika. It doesn't matter. She's just running, I guess. What does matter is that the writers want to make her step into one of Jinx's traps. A very specific trap that is apparently activated by a mechanical stone pedal on the ground. Okay. Vi accidentally steps on this pedal, causing 3 of Jinx's grenades to pop out of the ground around her. How did Jinx manage to construct this trap exactly? How did she install these mechanisms into the stone ground and then conceal them perfectly? Look at this pedal. It's just a regular stone in the ground.
That doesn't make any sense.
How does this cause these grenades to plop out? Where did she even put them? Look at this nonsense. They just phase right out of the ground. This is really stupid. And of course Vi doesn't take any damage from these grenades going off a mere arm length away from her. The explosions merely knock her to the ground, just like Kate and Sevika. Great. Why would Jinx even bother taking the time and effort to construct such an inconspicuous and elaborate trap only for her grenades to have such a minuscule impact in the highly unlikely scenario that either Vi or Caitlyn happen to step on this specific stone? Fucking hell, guys. Constructing lethal traps and weapons is one of the most obvious defining elements of Jinx's character. And you still manage to mess it up this badly. But I guess I shouldn't be too surprised given everything we've been over so far. What any semi-competent writer would have done here instead is make the grenades way more lethal, prompting Vi to use her gauntlet's energy shields. That would have been cool, seeing her use a familiar ability in a moment where it makes sense. Actually, hold on. Why didn't she use the energy shield here? Out of all the moments in this fight, this would have been the ideal opportunity to use it. Did she just forget about that ability? Is she not interested in protecting herself from very lethal looking grenades? Or did she somehow expect them to not do anything to her? Well then, why did she defensively put her arms up? Nice. That's 2 more stupid things we can add to the list. Meanwhile, after Vi steps into the trap, Jinx goes to fire another rocket, this time from the center of the temple. Only this time, it's her weapon that glitches out, causing it to explode and making her fall right onto Vi. Damn. That's very inconvenient for her. Lots of lucky and unlucky stuff happening in this fight, huh? As they scuffle on the ground, we are treated to yet another awesome-looking slow-motion shot of Jinx aiming her gun at Vi, while Vi has her gauntlet clasped around her head.
Whoa! Am I seeing this right?
Okay, just take a moment to think about what is happening here. What stops Vi from simply crushing Jinx's skull in that moment? Especially with Jinx threatening to shoot her. We know the Atlas gauntlets can crush much denser objects with ease. Either Vi kills Jinx right here, or she hesitates a bit too long and gets shot. Or something else happens to get them both out of this position and let the fight continue, even though that's definitely the least likely scenario. Well, turns out that third option is exactly what happens.
Sure, why not?
Moving on, as Caitlyn grabs her rifle and gets back up, Sevika catches her off guard again, puts her in a headlock, and once again refuses to finish the job. Sevika, please, you have a hyper-destructive mechanical arm. You used it to absolutely eviscerate Smeech in the prior episode. You've already used it multiple times in this fight. Why not use it now? Just capitalize on the element of surprise and swing your arm against her skull. Hell, even using your random slot machine feature would have been a better move than this. And if you don't want to use your arm, fine. Just walk up behind her, like you did, and snap her neck. This fight could have been over so many times if you had simply acted like the experienced, ruthless fighter we know you to be. Here's the thing. Even without employing her arm or combat skills to anywhere near the degree she should, Sevika still overpowers Caitlyn with ease. The writers bent over backwards nerfing Sevika just to give Kate a fighting chance, and it still wasn't enough to have her survive this fight. So the only solution left is to ruin Sevika's character even more by turning her into a retard. Just look at this. Caitlyn manages to throw Sevika off, and then Sevika just sits there, waiting to be tackled, looking dazed and confused. Jesus, Sevika, what happened to you? You know what? Here's a fun question. How is it that Sevika and Jinx, the characters who hated each other for all the years they worked under the same boss, are now best buddies? Oh. Right, because Sevika for some inexplicable reason didn't care enough to lift a finger to investigate Silco's mysterious death. Nor did any of his supposedly loyal followers. His bullet-pierced body sitting in this chair right next to Jinx's distinctly decorated dinner table, all of it pointing toward one specific culprit, was simply never discovered. Nobody knows how he died, where he died, or who killed him, because apparently nobody cared. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Instead, Sevika now sees Jinx, the person she always deemed the greatest liability to their cause, as the best possible ally to achieve her vision of a unified zone, even referring to her as our own people.
We give them Jinx. That's all they really want.
We don't hand over our people.
This is despite the fact that just a few months ago, Sevika felt nothing but frustration and contempt for her.
Why bother? Her back in town, it's only a matter of time before you implode, and Silco finally gets the message that you're about as good for our cause as you were for your family. Jinx.
The show doesn't even provide us with a single reason for this shift in Sevika's opinion, besides a very superficial, half-assed bonding moment between the two, which, mind you, happens after Sevika defends Jinx in front of the Cambarans. Meanwhile, every reasonable conclusion we can draw based on their dynamic points in the exact opposite direction. Oh well, I guess she just likes Jinx now. Cool. Anyway, Caitlyn somehow manages to hurt Sevika with her glitching hextech rifle. Once again, incredibly lucky that Jace went down here to touch the Wild Ruin exactly when he did. Otherwise, Caitlyn would have had no possible advantage in close quarters combat. Oh my god, you cannot make this shit up. Another shot where Vi has Jinx's head in the palm of her gauntlet and does nothing to capitalize on this opportunity, even though Jinx is this close to blowing her head off. What is going on? Why does nobody care? Writers, animators, storyboarders, whoever worked on this, please take a step back and think through the implications before you present a shot like this. Especially when you failed to communicate any sufficient hesitancy on Vi's part to end her sister's life, and have repeatedly demonstrated through her statements and choices that her intent to kill is quite explicit. This makes moments like these all the more confusing, because I have very little reason to believe Vi is genuinely struggling with the idea of killing Jinx. It just comes across as incompetence. Again, all these shots are incredible, awesome, fantastic, phenomenal. But honestly, the more I look at them, the more it feels like I'm watching a glorified League of Legends cinematic rather than a pivotal confrontation that is part of Arcane's narrative. Not just from a storytelling or character standpoint, but also in the superficial elements. Remember the fight between Vi and Savika in Season 1, Episode 5? Remember how we got to see a sequence of punches, throws, grapples, and kicks being exchanged? How the advantage kept shifting due to meaningful combat decisions? Remember how intense every punch felt? How effectively the weight of their attacks was communicated? Remember all the awesome fighting techniques both characters used against each other, countering the other's attacks and paying attention to the environment to gain an advantage? Yes? Then tell me, does the fight we are currently watching have any of that? So then tell me, dear viewer, which one is the superior fight scene? Precisely. All these shots can look as impressive as they want. Woodkid can cook as hard as he wants with his epic song and excellent vocals. If the narrative substance is lacking, I won't feel anything for them. I feel so much more for this shot than this shot. I feel so much more for this shot than this shot. I feel so much more for this shot than this shot. You get the point. This specific shot, though, is particularly frustrating. Not because it's bad or too on the nose or anything. It's actually fairly well done. Having the cute crayon sketch of Vi and Powder get shattered by the grown-up sisters trying to kill each other is cool and all. If this shot existed in a better story, I'd be sure to praise it as a positive. But since this season, Act 1 specifically, dramatically messed up the progression from both sisters tearing up over their tragic breakup in Episode 9 to trying to tear each other's heads off the very next time they meet, well, sometimes at least, the symbolic significance of this shot, any of these shots, is completely undermined. Alright, this is the final stretch. I promise you the pain will be over soon, though I'm afraid the worst is yet to come. So, while Vi and Jinx keep fighting ferociously, Caitlyn manages to incapacitate Savika by once again shoving her glitching rifle into her face. Because that's how that works, apparently. I guess Savika just can't do anything against the power of malfunctioning Hextech. Leaving Savika on the ground, Caitlyn promptly hurries off to assist Vi. Lucky she didn't just turn around and put a bullet in Savika's head, despite having every reason to do so. That would have been awkward for the conclusion of this fight, wouldn't it? I sure hope this is the last time she misses a crucial opportunity that would significantly alter the outcome of the story.
I don't like where this is going.
As Kate approaches the brawling sisters, she sees an opening, takes her shot, but only manages to hit Jinx's middle finger. Man, from that distance, with Kate's impeccable sniping skills, you'd expect her to easily land a lethal shot. Well, lucky for Jinx, I guess. Right after the shot, Jinx and Vi abruptly stop fighting, for no discernible reason at all, as Jinx stares at her severed finger for a good 5 seconds before getting tackled by Vi.
Go on.
Man, it's so convenient that Kate is on pause right now. Otherwise, she would have already taken multiple follow-up shots at Jinx. But who cares, right? We want to have this dramatic moment between Jinx and Vi. And of course, Jinx can't die. She's Arcane's biggest brand recognition.
That's me! Yep, that's me.
We need to keep her alive at all costs. So what do? We force Kate to stay put and not take advantage of the perfect opportunity to avenge her mother, the counselors, and everyone else Jinx has harmed over the years. We just hope that, as long as she's off screen, the audience has forgotten about her. Great strategy. Maybe Caitlyn is just out of ammo? Maybe her rifle can only hold 2 bullets at a time? Yeah, sure, that checks out. Lucky for Jinx. Man, so much luck happening here. We are drowning in luck with this one.
I'm glad it's you. Had to be you.
Huh? What? Sorry, do you seriously expect me to feel something here? To gasp, feel chills, shed a tear at this pivotal emotional moment between Arcane's 2 central protagonists? After all the inconsistent, contrived, and illogical nonsense it took you to get here? Yeah, not happening. I don't know these characters. This is not Vi, this is not Jinx, this is not Savika. The only one mostly untainted by this scene is Caitlyn, though her arc is just as rushed and wasted as nearly every other character in Season 2.
Go on. I'm ready.
The fact that Vi is actually about to kill Jinx here, without any meaningful exploration of the supposed shift in her perspective that brought her to this point, should be deeply insulting to any fan of her character in Season 1. To think she wasn't paralyzed in shock by the first punch she landed on her sister. That she wasn't haunted by the trauma of abandoning the brightest light in her life and handing her over to a monster is irreconcilable. You haven't done anything to earn my investment. In fact, you have actively destroyed it over the course of these 3 episodes.
Had to be you.
Ugh. Alright, here comes possibly the worst part of this entire scene. It's the Deus Ex Machina child plot device, right on time to save Jinx from certain death. Now, ignoring the horrendous editing, which makes it seem like Vi takes 5 full seconds to finish this punch, giving Isha just enough time to intervene, I'd like everyone to really appreciate what is happening here. This utterly shallow character, who just so happened to randomly bump into Jinx in the prior episode and has since been following her around, is the one to save her from being executed by her sister. And of course, this alternate version of Vi, who has almost nothing in common with the character we knew, is suddenly frozen in shock at the sight of this random kid trying to stop her. This is the same Vi who was fully determined to kill Jinx less than a minute ago. The same Vi who has spent weeks adamantly pursuing this goal while obeying the highly dubious orders of her tyrannical girlfriend. From her perspective, Jinx is the greatest obstacle to peace and the biggest threat to both cities. And yet, here we are.
Get away from her!
Kate!
Move!
Kate! She's a child!
All of it dropped because a random girl jumped in front of her to protect the murderous psycho her sister has become. Remember what Vi told Jace after he accidentally killed Rennie's son?
You didn't have a choice. He knew what he was signing up for. You just never had to look it in the eye. One dead kid? There's hundreds more where he came from, thanks to Silco and thanks to people like you who stuck their heads in the dirt. Kate. Move! Kate!
Well, just like that, she's fully ready to abandon the entire mission. She doesn't want to kill or even capture Jinx anymore. The same Vi who was willing to sacrifice a child's life as collateral to sabotage Silco's Shimmer production now suddenly holds all determination and agency because a child got involved.
Oh, that's stupid.
She could simply shield herself from the bullet, slap the gun away, better yet, grab it with one of her gauntlets, throw the kid aside and finish the job. But no. Instead, she's paralyzed, shocked at the sight of this kid shoving a gun in her face. She doesn't even consider getting the kid away from Jinx, even though doing so would immediately solve the whole issue. God forbid she lay a hand on this child to get her to safety, and finally complete this week-long operation. As a result, she now feels compelled to protect them both from Caitlyn, because apparently there's no possible way to kill Jinx without risking the life of this child. And this isn't just some impulsive, heat-of-the-moment decision she made without thinking it through. She doubles down on this exact perspective later, as if there truly was nothing she could have done in that moment.
You stopped me. I shouldn't have had to. I had the shot.
That was a kid. What if you missed?
Fuck off. This is not what Vi would do. This is not what she would think. Also, thank God Caitlyn decided to shoot the gun out of Isha's hand instead of taking a far more promising shot at an immobile Jinx. She had more than 10 seconds to work with. And you best believe that, with how much Isha hesitates here, she would not have shot Vi after hearing a bullet pierce Jinx's skull. It would have been far safer too. The likelihood of Caitlyn harming Isha, or Vi for that matter, by aiming for Jinx's head instead of the gun is much lower. But hey, I guess Vi isn't the only one here incapable of recognizing blatantly obvious solutions to handle this situation. That already makes 3. Also, this entire execution setup doesn't even make sense. Why are the writers pretending as though one gauntlet punch from Vi will kill Jinx, when a clean punch to the stomach didn't even break a single bone? How is this punch supposed to be dramatic when there's no reason to think it would even faze her that much? Especially when accounting for the severely suboptimal position Vi is in to generate maximal force, one punch to the head wouldn't have done anything. For that, she would have had to repeatedly and brutally bash Jinx's head in. Or am I meant to assume Vi was pulling her punches the entire time? That certainly seems to be the implication here, especially when comparing the insane destruction her gauntlets are shown to be capable of, particularly in Season 1, Episode 8, and Season 2, Episode 5. Look at this. One serious punch and it's over for Jinx. The only feasible explanation for this discrepancy is that Vi was holding back significantly against Jinx, which would have made a lot of sense had they 1. Not butchered her character over the course of Act 1, and 2. Not shown her looking so determined and compelled to win this fight. Look at these shots. Do these really look like the expressions Vi would be making while she is trying her very best not to absolutely eviscerate her sister with her severely overpowered gauntlets?
No, I guess not.
Why, after all those explicit statements about having given up on Powder and being content with killing Jinx, would Vi risk her life multiple times fighting against someone who is clearly trying to kill her? More pressingly, why would she suddenly be willing to execute her sister? If anything, this interaction should make her even more hesitant in her conviction. The animators even made sure to show us her doubtful facial expression as she pins Jinx down and sees her relax, exhaling in relief as though fully at peace with the idea that all the pain and suffering will end at the hands of the person she still loves most. Fuck it, why am I even trying to make sense of this anymore? So Sevika, having somewhat recovered from whatever damage Caitlyn dealt to her, then pulls a lever behind the big engraved stone door, which activates a bomb that blasts it open, releasing a powerful gust of wind. The force quickly sweeps Caitlyn and Vi off their feet, hurling them out of the temple, while Jinx, Isha and Sevika manage to brace themselves and stay inside, followed by a cascade of rubble breaking off the temple, sealing off the entrance and cutting off both teams, abruptly ending the confrontation. This was terrible. I don't usually like to dwell on writing flaws to this extent, but this scene, this act, and the bitter state it left me in after its conclusion didn't really give me a choice. It's the perfect representation of nearly everything that went wrong with Season 2. Rushed storytelling, missed opportunities, lackluster character development, inconsistent motivations, nonsensical setups, practically non-existent world building, a severe overuse of music montages, poorly executed fight scenes with bad choreography, and baffling character choices. Again, this fight feels much closer to a League of Legends cinematic than a meaningful continuation of the brilliant story told in Season 1. There's no weight, no tension, no carefully put together choreography. It's just flashy visuals, clean transitions, epic music, and dialogue that sounds like it was ripped straight from the game. A pretty facade over a hollow, disjointed core. The consistently rushed storytelling didn't just harm this scene in isolation. It killed my investment in these characters, squeezing it dry within only 3 episodes and leaving the rest a chore to endure. This is not the Vi, Jinx, Sevika, or Caitlyn I came to know in Season 1. This is not the journey they would have gone on, at least not in the absurdly short time frame we were given to work with. These are hollow shells of what could have been, their arcs skipped over or left entirely unaddressed to rush this story to a half-baked conclusion. This scene? Well, it's just the cherry on top, the symptomatic culmination of everything else this first act had already failed at. This was supposed to be a slow, steady marathon, like Season 1. Instead, we got a sloppy sprint to nowhere, to places we shouldn't have gone, or at least places that needed thorough exploration to carry the appropriate narrative weight. And yet, despite all its myriads of flaws, there are isolated moments of brilliance buried under this shallow misery. Jinx's genuine look of shock when Vi rips apart Pao Pao, a glimpse of Powder slipping through, was a subtle but welcome moment. The parallels between Jinx lashing out uncontrollably, channeling her murderous persona, and the pain Powder still carries deep inside her are expertly drawn. Her pain is palpable in moments like these. When Isha points the gun at Vi, Jinx screams no. Even in her fractured state, even after everything that happened, she doesn't want her sister to die. It could have been an incredibly powerful moment if it weren't for these multiple earlier parts where Jinx explicitly shows her intent to kill Vi. And perhaps most remarkably, there's Isha wrapping her arms around Jinx as she tries to pull her off. Worry, pain, and regret written on her face.
Get off me!
In that moment, Vi sees her sister again. It's the realization that she's not entirely gone. And for Jinx, or Powder in that moment, it's a painful reminder of everything she's lost, everything she's become, and the pain her existence inflicts on everyone else. These isolated moments are beautifully executed, heartfelt, and genuine to some extent. They are tiny, tiny pieces of the story that could have been told. However, for all the aforementioned reasons, they lack the narrative substance they deserved, because the story didn't earn them.
I'm sorry. I really am. I'm done.
I wish I had an emotional reaction to these moments. I wish I could feel the tension, the sadness, the catharsis this scene was so clearly aiming for. But all I could see was missed potential. And my God, how much potential there was. And sure, many people felt tension, excitement, and sadness. Perhaps they brushed past all the inconsistencies, lackluster motivations, and laughable fight choreography. Perhaps they were distracted by the breathtaking visuals, the stellar music, or their own headcanon filling in the gaps. If you are one of those people, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you were able to enjoy the spectacle for what it was, even without the proper journey to support it. But please, do not put Season 2 on the same pedestal as Season 1. Don't praise it as a brilliant piece of storytelling or a fantastic conclusion to Arcane's story. Don't conflate your subjective enjoyment of Season 2 with its objectively subpar writing quality. Just because you like something does not mean it meets a high standard of storytelling. I am relieved to see more people slowly waking up to the fact that, while the paint job in this season is nothing short of masterful, its story leaves a hell of a lot to be desired. Over the past months, I've seen a significant shift in sentiment across multiple online communities discussing Season 2, and hopefully that momentum will reach broader audiences. The writers, the producers, the studio, they need to understand how badly they messed up. Future fans shouldn't have to watch their beloved shows get butchered like this. We shouldn't have to watch Arcane get butchered like this. This frustrating lack of good writing in modern high-budget storytelling needs to end, or at least be severely diminished, because I am so unbelievably tired of it. At this stage, I've pretty much lost all interest in any future shows set in Arcane's universe. I don't care that Jinx survived, I don't care if Vi, Caitlyn, Mel, Echo or Savika will return in the future. I'll simply take Season 1 for what it was, pretend the show ended on that gut-wrenching cliffhanger, and move on to exploring other pieces of storytelling that meet my, apparently far too high standards. One thing I can say for certain is this. This is far from the last video I'll be making on Arcane Season 2. There's so much left to analyze, to mock, to scorn, and to dissect until the true extent of what was done to this show has been laid bare. And you, dear viewer, especially if you've made it to the end of the video, are more than welcome to stick around for future content. That will be everything for now, and I hope to see you next time.